Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly want to welcome our witnesses and for the testimonies that they've provided before the joint hearing this morning. Mr. Jarvis, I want to commend you for the distinction and the outstanding job that you have done or is doing as the Director of the National Park Service. With a track record of some 40 years of service to our nation and to the American people, I think should be recognized. Mr. Jarvis, you mentioned that the Park Service takes in about 232 million visitors a year, with some 700,000 people each day of the 401 national parks, and you have to operate in the budget as 1/15 of 1% of our national budget. Am I correct in putting these before you?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Mr. Jarvis, it's sad that I seem to see that you have become a political punching bag for this hearing, and it's really unfortunate. And I think what we're trying to do here is to give a real sense of the challenges and the problems that you're faced with as the director. When you were given notice that you need to shut down, you mentioned that the shutdown occurred on the 1st of October?
That is correct.
And how do you go about shutting down an agency? I believe 70,000 federal workers work for the Department of the Interior, and out of that, some 68,000 have been furloughed?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yes.
And the Park Service is part of that?
That's correct.
In all the responsibilities that you bear, and I think it's been a common interest explained here this morning, the fact that a tremendous economic disaster has been created because of the shutdown. Am I correct on that?
We calculate that for every dollar invested in the national park system, you get $10 back to the economy.
And Mr. Galvin, I am very interested in your statement. You said you represent the National Parks Conservation Association with a membership of some 800,000 of our fellow Americans?
That's correct, Mr. Faleomavaega.
What are some of the most classic things that the association has been able to achieve, and you as a trustee of this association?
Well, as I said in my opening statement, the National Parks Conservation Association is uniquely focused on supporting the national parks since 1919. And we do that by providing information to the public, by providing information to our visitors, by involving ourselves in issues at the park level, by
Mr. Galvin, my time is short. Let me go on. I want to send you. I'd like to quote your statement that you made here as an observation on the hearing this morning, and I quote: "The National Park Service is not to blame for the failure of Congress to keep our government open and provide the resources needed to maintain our parks and keep them completely open. Blaming national parks employees for the abysmal results of such a failure of national leadership is unconscionable." Can you share that with us more?
Well, you know, I think this hearing is about how the shutdown has worked out, okay? And as I said in my statement, doing shutdown plans isn't easy for a 401-unit system that extends beyond an international date line. But there isn't any question about why there was a shutdown. There is no appropriation. There is no continuing resolution. There is no money to pay employees. Even the few employees that John has at his disposal today are not being paid. So we can debate about the World War II Memorial or Grand Canyon. The fact is 401 units of the National Park Service are mostly closed.
Mr. Jarvis, I'm sorry, my time is getting, thank you, Mr. Galvin. Mr. Jarvis, how much of an economic benefit, what has it done to the economy of this country, the fact that what the National Parks has done in terms of, just like Mayor Bryan, Ms. Eberly, and Ms. Simon, in terms of their responsibilities, how much of an economic impact because of the closure?
Well, at this moment, October, which is a peak period for many of our gateway communities, the impact is enormous. And, you know, they're not going to recover that. I mean, even if the Federal employees are paid at the end of this, our concessioners, our gateway communities, those hotels, restaurants will not recover this loss. And so we have already begun to figure out how we can get some of these back open. And as the mayor of Tusayan indicated, we've reopened the Grand Canyon, we've reopened Rocky Mountain, 8 parks in Utah, all of these because, frankly, we shut these down on October 1 and immediately began to figure out how we can work to get those back open without violating the Anti-Deficiency Act. And I think the evidence shows, from Claude Moore to the Peaks of Otter to the Grand Canyon, that I have been working very hard with a very small staff. There are only 9 of us left in the Park Service in Washington office to get these parks back open so that we can get the $76 million per day that the National Park Service is contributing to the national economy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop.